Welcome back to the Fresh Freedom Podcast. Today is a special edition of our podcast. We have the ALEC edition of this podcast, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a convention of state lawmakers from around the country that get together to share ideas. With me today are two of my constituents and state representatives from Southwest Missouri. We have Bob Titus, who represents the Nixa area. We have Ben Baker, who represents the Neosho area, all in Southwest Missouri. In addition, they drug along one of our good friends, Tim Jones.
Can't get rid of me.
The former Speaker of the House.
Great to be here.
The People's Speaker.
Thank you.
So you guys have been in ALEC this week. For those people that have never heard of this, it's a very foreign idea, but tell us, what is ALEC and what have you guys been doing this week?
Yeah, so ALEC is a great organization, especially for lawmakers to be able to, I think, have it's multiple reasons, right? You need help when it comes to bouncing ideas off of other lawmakers around the country, other policies that people are working on that they've vetted. Their whole structure, too, of working through model policy where you have a task force that you're assigned to, and you can actually debate on that legislation and vote on that legislation, whether it becomes model policy or not. Really works for a pipeline of good, vetted, conservative legislation. So that's the policy side of it. But the other value to me, since I've been in for 6 years, my entire time in the House with ALEC, is the relationships that you build with people, other lawmakers. I've made great friends that I think will be lifetime friends, like-minded people from all over the country throughout that process as well. So we have the annual meeting in the summer, and then the SNPS meeting, which is in the winter every year, where we meet, get together, and they bring in speakers as well. Like Newt Gingrich spoke, was it yesterday? Vivek Ramaswamy speaking today. So you get to hear from a lot of the thought leaders of our time too, and that's always fantastic as well. So,
well, I'm the newbie to ALEC. So
is this your first time?
No, actually, I think this is my third ALEC.
Oh, good for you!
Event. So, yeah, no, it's a rich experience.
You're the young guy.
And that's me. No, it's a rich experience. Just as Ben mentioned, the relationships, but more than anything, I mean, what we do as legislators, it prevents us from having to reinvent the wheel. Yes. And we can take tried and proven legislation and then adapt it to our state. But that's the rich part. I mean, with term limits in Missouri, we only have a limited amount of time to get on top of this stuff. And this is a great exercise in getting on top of the legislative process and learning what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, Eric, it's a convention. It's a trade association of state legislators. You and I go way back in ALEC. It's how we developed and enriched our friendship, going to ALEC meetings together and learning about things.
Yeah, we even shared a hotel
room.
Here,
back in the day when we were, just poor country lawyers.
With little campaign dollars.
Exactly. And so, the ALEC meeting this weekend in D.C., we've got 1,000 people from around the country trying to figure out ways to implement solutions in the states. You tell us all the time how ponderously slow Congress operates, and we'd rather have the states doing more work. And so ALEC is a nonpartisan group, but its tagline is free markets, limited government, federalism. So you can guess which party is more represented than not at ALEC. But that should be something that every American wants.
Yeah, I pray that the Democratic Party embraces the free market, federalism.
Don't hold your breath.
All those things. Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be great.
But so when we were involved, it was the left hated ALEC. They would come and protest. In fact, I distinctly remember the hotels. You would have protests all around the building, paid protesters. Is that happening today?
I don't think so.
Not as much. I think the last time that I saw a big group of protesters was in Austin. That's been, I think, probably my first ALEC meeting, actually.
Yeah.
They had a big group outside right after Trump got elected, and of course, me, I wore my MAGA hat and went right through the whole crowd of protesters just for the fun of it. But that's me.
It's funny that Rep. Baker mentions that. So maybe now that Trump's back in office, they'll make protesting great again because they've kind of, Eric, it's either they've realized that it's not worth protesting Alec's policies because where they're implemented, they actually work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
limited government, so reducing taxes, controlling spending, free markets. Putting free market operations into every aspect of life, whether it's education system, banking system, insurance system, whatever.
Healthcare.
And then federalism. Yeah, not having you probably pull your hair out every day with all the things that you're like seeing that the federal government's doing that was never supposed to do. So returning that power to the states.
That's awesome. I think that, whenever people would ask me about it, I would say, you mean you don't want me to go, like the protesters, you don't want me to go somewhere to share my ideas or learn from other lawmakers, like what's working in other states or what didn't work? I think that's what your constituents would expect that you're doing, is really trying to be the best state. And how are you going to know that you're the best state unless you know what other states are doing?
Yeah. No, those protesters really provide a contrast between function and dysfunction. And so, they're not there today, but if they come back, there's going to be that contrast.
What has been the theme this week? What are some of the major touch point issues that you've seen?
For me, you sense a lot of enthusiasm right now with the results of the election. Obviously, there's a lot of enthusiasm about that. There's enthusiasm about for the first time in my life, I think I see hope in actually downsizing the federal government, moving some of that power back to the states. But then also, I've called it the MAGA draft. You've probably heard me on the podcast talk about this, but the people that Donald Trump is picking this time is an obvious tell as to what went wrong sometime, a lot in the 2016 election, and putting people in place that are anti-establishment and that have common sense approaches to things. You've got Elon Musk that became such a huge part of this election and red-pilled really, for all intents and purposes. And then, looking at, with Doge, looking at what can we cut out of government that doesn't need to be there. You've got a bill abolishing the ATF. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, I think this is actually possible. Some of these things. Before, it's like we we file something knowing that it's probably never going to go anywhere. But I think for the first time, people sense a hope in some of this, and I think that's huge. So tax policy has been a big part of the discussion this week because I think if we don't extend the Trump tax cuts, it's going to be a huge burden for the American people. So that's been really at the forefront, and we're talking about tax policy in Missouri too. That's a number one issue for us. So
yeah, I'd say limiting government and restoring power back to the states has been a big talk. And like Ben said, like for the first time ever, people aren't just talking in a cliched kind of hyperbolic way about that we're going to actually eliminate things in government. They're talking about actually doing them. And the talk that you're hearing up here, and I know you all, we're going to have an audience with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. Vivek Ramaswamy is coming to the ALEC conference today as well to talk about implementing a Department of Doge on the state level. Like we all on the state level should be creating a Doge caucus or a Doge committee or something. Awesome. And some of your colleagues have put out laundry lists. Some of them, Rand Paul puts it out every year, the airing of grievances on Festivus of the trillions of dollars, right, that you all could eliminate today, and none of us would be adversely affected anywhere in the country tomorrow.
Although I will say Missouri's ahead of the curve on that because we have a committee called Downsizing State Government. Yes. Who was the chair for 2 years? This guy. And we did a lot of good stuff.
And they cut the state budget in Missouri last year for the first time in 10 years. And nobody is crying or dying in the streets. No. In fact, people are happy about it.
We need to make that a trend.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we can get there.
So I know that you can specialize or go into particular study sessions. Which study sessions are you guys involved in?
Taxation, and I get into commerce and insurance are my specialties.
Mine is communications and technology. I think that's a huge task force for the next years coming up. We've got AI, all these things that are so important that if we don't get on top of this, we're really already behind on AI. And then energy policy as well, I think is going to be huge for the next 4 years. I've been on tax policy, but I'm kind of switching that to energy for the next few years. So,
Where do you see where do you see it growing? Is it growing from chapter to chapter, from state to state, or is it growing within the state of Missouri?
Yes. So, Missouri, having continuity and succession planning in Missouri is tough every cycle because of term limits. And, put that issue aside for a minute. They exist. And some of us like them, some of us don't. Some of us think they need to be changed so we have institutional memory and bureaucrats and lobbyists don't run Jefferson City and legislators do. So one of the biggest challenges we have in Missouri is every 2 years as people leave, we want to get the new folks to ALEC to have that experience. And do you like it? Do you not? What can you get out of this? So in Missouri, I would say ALEC is growing. We have our largest contingent at this winter meeting, I think, that we've had in years. And that's because Bob's here and Ben's here, and he's our lead state chair. And he and his colleagues help recruit members and say, hey, come with me. And so we have 15 Missouri legislators. There's actually 5 legislators from Illinois here, believe it or not, too.
That was great.
The Happy Warriors for Freedom.
The People's Republic of Illinois has some people.
and Eric, you know where they're focused? They love the red states. Of course, the red states always have great coalitions. ALEC is looking at expanding the blue state membership, like Illinois, like Maryland, like others. And there are significant blue state contingents here as well, because they've had some success stories in pointing out how insane the left has gotten. Yeah. They've been able to stop a lot of the worst policies. And we even heard a story about there was a Maine state senator, right? She's in the super minority. She passed a healthcare transparency bill in the state of Maine.
And got the idea for that. And
from ALEC.
From the language from ALEC. That's really amazing. That's awesome. And I hear that something special happened for Missouri this week at ALEC, that a special recognition was given.
We're going to embarrass him now.
Stop.
So tell me about it, Tim. Tell me about this special recognition.
So ALEC gives out awards every year, and to justly deserving people, and a variety of awards across a lot of different policy areas.
So this is amongst how many thousands of lawmakers?
There's 1,500 legislative members of ALEC in all 50 states.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great legislators accomplishing a lot of great things. But I nominated Ben Baker this year, and I pushed hard. Not only does he have an incredible legislative record of accomplishments, but he's had some personal crises and challenges that I hope none of the rest of us ever have to deal with. But he's dealt with all of it with courage and grace, and he's continued to marshal on and continue to fight the good fight because he sees the big picture. And I just thought that he deserved it this year, and so pushed hard for it with the board. Didn't know if he was going to get it or not because there was a ton of nominations, but Ben Baker is Legislator of the Year for the country. So sorry to embarrass you.
Yeah, he deserves it.
It's well deserved, Ben. No, everybody I think can appreciate and enjoy seeing that you've been recognized, not only really for the work that you've done, like your voting record, your the legislative bills that you work on, they really are they're leading. You have become a leader not just in Missouri, but clearly you have an effect on other state lawmakers around the country.
Well, it was a great honor. Like I said in my speech the other night, if you want to call it that, I think there's more deserving people when it comes to legislators, but I do try to work hard and I try to make it a team effort. That's the thing. If you can get a lot accomplished if you don't care about who gets the credit, and I think that pays off because you build relationships and people realize you're a team player. This year we did get some significant. Probably my biggest win in my time in the House was Amendment 7 in Missouri. Enshrining only citizens can vote into our Constitution, and by the way, the first state in the Union to do that. Was Missouri this year, to put that in our Constitution, and then also banning ranked choice voting, which is a horrible ruse of the left to try to make inroads, especially in red states, and really rig our elections. And people overwhelmingly, I knew that if we could get it to the ballot, people in Missouri would vote for it, but 68% was a huge win. I don't remember.
They really embraced it.
Yeah, I don't remember a ballot initiative that had that kind of support. As far as I can remember. And so
that means a lot of Democrats and independents voted for it.
Yeah, because it made sense. it's common sense, but it also was clear on the ballot. And I heard that from a lot of people. A lot of problems with the initiative petition is that they make it so convoluted and difficult to understand when people go vote. They just get so frustrated with it. And they were like, man, yours was the only one. 7 was the only one we could just read and be like, well, yeah, it's a good idea, you know? So it was a big win. And again, but it wasn't just me. You're only one of 163 in the House in Missouri, which is one of the larger House bodies in the country. But I think it was a policy that people could come around and say, this is what we need to do. So.
And what Missouri did is become an ALEC model policy on that, and we hope that we're not the only state next year that adopts this.
Yeah.
I think others will.
And so explain that. So the ALEC model policy, that's, and before we do move on, congratulations. It's well-deserved. Everyone in Missouri should be proud of having, nationwide, the state legislator of the year. That's an amazing honor. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And so you've created this model. Explain what when you say model legislation, how does that work?
Well, these guys can dig into some of the details of what they see on today's task forces, but ALEC historically has wanted to bring the best and brightest ideas to these meetings where, look, you could travel around the country and it would take you weeks, if not months, to go visit 15, 20, 30 states and talk to legislators and all. So we bring everybody together in the space of 3 days, and we talk best practices. We talk about what you mentioned earlier, what works, what doesn't work. Out of that comes ideas. Those ideas are turned into actual model policy, which is nothing more than a proposed bill. It's like a bill that you all would file. And they work out the differences, they hammer it out, and then it voluntarily is available for legislators in all 50 states to pick that model up. And they can change it, they can edit it. They can do whatever they need to do.
It's like picking up a recipe or a template and saying, okay, let's start with from here, and maybe we will customize it to our state, right?
So I'm sure Representative Baker worked on this.
It's kind of like a boilerplate policy. I mean, and what's cool about it, though, is it comes from the legislators, right? These are bills
been well vetted.
that somebody's already introduced or passed in other states, and they're bringing that to the table saying, we did this here, we think it's a good idea. But then the task force looks at that, they read it, they actually vote on it, debate it, they make amendments to it, they can change it in that task force and vet that even further. And then if it passes, it becomes a model policy for a period of time where that it's available for other legislators to look at and introduce in their states. Of course, it's kind of a generalized policy. It's something that usually always has to be custom fit for your state, for your statutes. But it's a wonderful way of being able to very quickly look at, you've got all these different industry areas and task force where you can look at policy, because most of us are on different committees that are involved in those kind of things, and we can pick it up and go from there. And it saves us a ton of time as well, because a lot of this work has already been done, and so we can go from there. It's very helpful.
Last question, really, for those people that are Missourians or want to see how Missouri's leading, what are going to be the top issues that you are going to be facing this next year?
A reduction or eliminating the income tax in the state of Missouri, I think will be a big priority, and so it'll be a lot of work to do that. But it's important. I think it's important to empower the taxpayers in our state, and I think the time has come. I'm really enthusiastic about the environment for that.
You may be that's a historic class if you're able to pull that off.
Yeah, income tax. Education reform, we're always trying to move the ball on that. Missouri's so far behind on education reform compared to other red states. It's terrible, but we are making strides in that, getting some policy in place. I think you're going to see some of the DEI stuff come back. We're dealing with that. There's a huge momentum right now on the DEI stuff, even with the Trump administration. It hasn't worked. I think you see corporate America seeing it's not working. Yeah. The shareholders are like, this is not helping. This is not making us money. Some of that I think we'll be working on as well. There's several of the other issues when it comes to some of the woke agenda that we'll be dealing with as well. But fiscal policy is something that is so important to put that money back into the pockets of Missourians. And I think that's a major issue for us.
Yeah, Eric, you and I started this effort back in 2014. It's been slow, but it's been steady. And every single year over the last 10 years that Missouri's income tax rate has ticked downward, state revenues have increased. So it was a complete lie of the left that if we cut income taxes, which are, I believe, an immoral tax on people's labors, that somehow the sky would fall and that the budget would implode. The opposite has happened. Missouri's budget has doubled. We probably need to do more tax cuts, more revenue growth, more revenue caps. So revenue will continue to grow, and that way Missourians will be empowered instead of taxpayers being forced to empower government. It's worked, and these guys are going to continue to do it. I couldn't be more proud of them. They're continuing that legacy, and it's something Missouri needs to do to keep up with its neighbors. All of our 8 neighboring states, even the People's Republic of Illinois, has a lower flat tax currently than we do. They constantly try to raise it, but the people reject it. But all of our other states around us have governors that are pushing hard on this to remain competitive with each other. So we got to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak.
That's exciting. Well, I just want to say thank you for representing me. Thank you for keeping my taxes low. And thank you for leading the country, really as a state. You know, you guys are a model state. The new model legislation that you put forward, thank you. Because you're not just having an impact on Missouri, you're affecting the whole nation. And thank you for watching Fresh Freedom. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like and subscribe button. This podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and Rumble. Until next time, stay free.